Welcome to another episode of Otherworldly Encounters with Mike and Brian. How you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. Just celebrated Veterans Day. We did have to take a week off the podcast. My father-in-law passed away, so that's kind of sad. But just in the theme of the podcast, after we talked to our buddy the first time, my wife and mother-in-law reached out to him to kind of do not a psychic reading, but just a kind of a touch base. And I didn't ask for the context of what that was, but apparently whatever Gregory told him was something that no one else would have known. It was pretty profound for him. So again, shout out to Gregory. It's an interesting gift that he has, helpmegregory.com. So
yeah, it's fascinating. It truly is. So that's three people now that we know of, like you, me, and now your mother-in-law. So yeah. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, pretty wild.
So tonight, I'm actually really excited about this. This was suggested to us that we maybe, and this is the first time we've ever done this. We haven't. So we're going to dive into the most fascinating alien abduction. I know how you feel about alien abductions. Cases out there, recently showcased on Netflix, Docuseries, and it's the Manhattan Alien Abduction.
Yep.
So it's a 3-part series, covers the story of Linda Napolitano, who claimed that she was abducted in Manhattan apartment in 1989.
Right.
So
yeah, this one, it's interesting because this is a pretty high profile alien abduction story. Obviously, that's why Netflix picked it up to talk about it. But, in the middle of New York City, of all places, too, I think that's kind of a unique aspect of it. But before we get deeper into this, I do want to take a minute. Today is November the 11th, which is a Monday. This coming Wednesday is, if you remember, and I know our viewers, listeners do too, we did the 3-part series on Fravor, Grush, and Graves, and who all, as a trio, testified to Congress about their experiences and what they were finding, and there's more information out there. We just need to ask the right people. This coming Wednesday, not directly related to that, but it is directly related to that, is the second congressional hearing. So I think we'll have something interesting to talk about for our next podcast based on whatever the outcome of that conversation with Congress is.
yeah, no, that'd be legit. It'd be interesting to hear, what new comes out of that hearing. So yeah, I mean, stand by. So we do have some other significant dates for this week too, I guess. Then I guess we should probably talk about that. But so November 10th, to all my fellow Marines out there, happy birthday. And in the spirit of the Marine Corps, we're going to drink a beer that I collaborated with Dalton Union Brewery called 3 Deuce 5. So this beer, I don't know if you can see it there. This beer I helped design with one of our local breweries. It's a beer that discusses my unit's deployment back in 2005. So it's a really good beer. It's an American strong ale. So it's good to go. And then also today is Veterans Day, like you mentioned. So thank you to all those who served.
Thank you.
And for that, so we're thinking this might be a two beer episode. We are going to drink a beer from Armed Forces Brewery Company, Preamble. Is that how you would say that?
Yeah.
And it says, we the people on the front of it.
Preamble to the Constitution.
There we go. So,
hell yeah.
There we go. So that's another good one. So that's what we're going to be drinking tonight. So let's crack one open. I'm going to go with the strong ale. All right. So
just real quick, the witnesses on Wednesday, just so everyone's aware, Dr. Tim Gallaudet, who's a Rear Admiral for the U.S. Navy, and now Chief Executive Officer of Ocean STL Consulting. So it's interesting as we talk about underwater submerged objects that we have an ocean-based person testifying.
Yeah.
Lou Elizondo, who just put out the book and who led Arrow for a while. We've talked about him a couple different times. And then Michael Gold, who I don't know, but the name looks familiar. So I haven't even researched who that is yet because this just came out a couple days ago.
Nice. Well, like I say, I think this will be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a hot topic in the UFO world, man.
yeah, absolutely.
Congressional testimony.
And
I
am really interested to find out if anything new is released or if it's just basically just throwing up everything that Grush Graves and Fravor had said.
I don't think so. I'm sure the Rear Admiral was maybe affiliated with the USS Russell case that's kind of become famous. So that, I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, it's coming up. So make sure you tune in.
So Brian, you made a good point, when you were talking about alien abductions, and typically if, this one, per this case, this happened in downtown Manhattan, right?
Right.
Now, in some of the other abduction cases that we've looked at, and discussed, is all rural. And if you go back and you look at other alien abduction cases, they're all rural. So this is like the first one that I know of that's urban. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how. I mean, we'll get into it, but I mean that's just that's to me is the one first thing that stood out to me was it.
It's New York City, man. It's the city that never sleeps. So for sure, someone would be out there seeing it. But again, we're going back in time. It's 1989. So walking around with a camcorder, not everyone has the mini computers that we do now in our pockets. So like video's elusive, but 21, I think 23 individual folks saw this happening and they were like, oh, we thought it was a stunt, or, somebody's it's New York. Something's always going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into that too. It just, and really Brian and I both watched the 3-part series for this. And I'm just going to start out and say, I thought it was well put together. I mean, it was suspenseful.
I enjoyed it.
The soundtrack was amazing. If you paid attention to like music.
I didn't pay attention.
But the one thing that I really liked, it was just like, basically like the stage lighting, the way they had everything set up, the colors, like it was just kind of like this old school retro, blues and reds or whatever. I don't know. I just thought it was super, super neat. And I thought that just the aesthetics of it really like drew you into like this, alien abduction case.
I just, being an Ohio boy, I love the New York accent, and just having this lady in New York, thick New York accent, like just quintessential New Yorker. I got abducted. I don't know. It just draws me in. I'm like, this is kind of funny. You and I have talked. Like, I believe there's something out there. Have people been abducted? I don't know. Things seem to point to yes, but like Travis Walton's bullshit. I believe Christopher Bledsoe. Did he really get abducted, or did he have a mental experience where he connected with something outside of the realm of what we would call the physical realm? Was it a fourth dimension, I don't know, mind abduction, call it maybe.
Right.
So, yeah. I don't know. It was interesting, but I'm with you. It was well put together. And actually, one of our friends was like, you guys should cover that. Mm-hmm. We both watched it and was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like,
yeah, I think it's just one of those things that never really crossed our minds because, we talk about, different cases or whatnot. But
yeah,
I mean, if we weren't such dum-dums, we'd be able to like throw a video or something somewhere. But
how long did we spend trying to figure out how to put a video up there?
Well, I got here at like 7:15 and it's now 8:56.
Okay. So, yeah. So a while. For our viewers and listeners out there, we've done really well with having FaceTime calls with like Paul. Actually, I don't think we had the cameras for Mitch or Sean.
No, they weren't. No, not yet.
Yeah, or anyone really. So Paul's the only one. But the FaceTime worked really well. But videos, that's a whole new ball game. So we're baby steps here.
Yeah. So in this episode, we're going to discuss the impact the story has held on the world of UFO investigations and alien abduction lore. Plus, we really wanted to show the trailer. If I can figure out in the editing, I will put the trailer in there because it's a really good trailer.
I got faith in you.
To give all you viewers a taste of the suspense this series brings. So you ready to dive into it and start chatting?
Yeah.
All right. So in the first episode, you got Linda.
Let's talk about the main players.
Yeah. So you got Linda. I think her name
Napolitan. Napolitano.
I think so, yeah. So she's the main character. She was the one that claims to be abducted.
He's the abductee.
Yep. And then you've got
Bud Hopkins.
Bud Hopkins
famous UFO.
Yeah, renowned in the UFO. And then you've got Linda. What was Linda's last name?
No. Well, Linda was the abductee.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Carol Ramey.
Carol Ramey.
So Carol Ramey and Bud Hopkins were married, and Carol was like a film producer.
Yes.
And then Linda was the abductee that came kind of into this. One thing I think is interesting, and Bud Hopkins was around for a while before this Linda case happened. Like, I think Bud started in the 70s. And he was one of the original UFO abduction kind of pioneers. And like, you know, most people are like, you're fucking nuts. You need to go to the nut house. Aliens don't exist. No one gets abducted. This is all bullshit. Mm-hmm. Bud was one of those people that was like, and you know, we talk about it, the 90% and 10%. 90% of what you hear is bullshit. 10%, maybe there's something there. Bud was one of those people. It's like, well, what if out of 100 people, 90 are bullshitters on the abduction, but 10% actually happened? Like, is that not worth studying? And so he went and talked to these people. And what's funny is Bud ended up on a bunch of TV series, I think he did, not Oprah, who was...
He did Ricky Lake, Geraldo.
Yeah.
And you know what? Was he on Oprah?
But that's kind of like, and you even saw it in the Netflix series, like Bud was on the stage and he's like, I'm never doing another one of these again. You guys are just making fun of it. You're not even giving it a chance.
Right.
It's like something to laugh at. And that was not the intent. And that kind of made the whole UFO field take a couple steps backwards. And it's so interesting if you think from 1970 to now, like we just had, and I don't know, did the series make top 10 of Netflix?
I don't know. I don't even really know when it was released.
Just less than a month ago.
Yeah,
for sure.
it was definitely recent, but I just don't know how long.
But now it's like mainstream media. And that just shows people's perceptional like shift in the topic over time. Like where it used to just be a for fun topic, now people are like, maybe there is something out there.
Well, I think you can also contribute that to a lot of, you know, like Fravor Graves and Grush, you know, coming forward. And, you know, now with everybody having a camera in their pocket and being able to go out, you know, Chris Bledsoe constantly filming orbs, you know. So I think to your point, people are more receptive of the thought of there being something else out there.
Listen, and we've said it a million times, but if you're someone that's not interested in the three big questions of, you know, where do we come from, what happens when we die, and are we alone, then one, this show is not for you. And two, like, what are you doing with your life? Because how does that not fascinate you?
Yeah. And I'm sure that majority of our viewers, that's one of those have probably crossed their mind, you know, and how much thought we put into it is different, you know, one thing, but
well, ignorance is bliss too. I get it.
Well, you know, I'm right there.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digressed us.
No, it's all right. So the case happened November 30th, 1989, which is kind of cool that we're doing this in November.
Right. Yeah. Pretty close.
Was not planned.
Pretty close.
But yeah, so, you know, we just talked about the characters, right? You got,
Linda, Bud, and Carol.
Yep. And so, and
big three.
You know, the crazy thing with Linda. All right. So like you touched on, Bud, whatever. Bud. It's going to be a rough night.
Bud Hopkins.
It's going to be a rough night. So Bud Hopkins, like you talked to, and so he actually had support groups, right? And so this was before him and...
But yeah, so they did have support groups, and the intent of the support group was to bring people that had been abducted together to share their experiences and look for similarities. I mean, it's basic science, right? Like, what's the problem? And then let's talk about everyone's experiences and try to correlate some of the things that match up against one another to see. And you know, for Bud, I think I will say this about Bud. I think Bud was someone who really generally believed that people wanted to tell the truth and no one really had malintentions. And that was really the premise of the Netflix series. But I think for people that wanted to laugh at his work back in the 70s, that's probably part of this because, again, that 90-10 ratio, like, I think where we're 90-10, Bud was more like, I don't, you know, maybe that percentage was a little bit too high.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell in the series itself that he truly wanted to believe everybody that came to him for help. You know, like he did
The hypnosis,
the hypno,
hypnotic regression.
yeah, hypnotic regression,
Mm.
and I will give Carol some props in that because she did make me think. But I want to wait before we get into that because I really want our viewers to understand this case a little better and like how it transpired and all the things that kind of went at it, and then we can get into like our thoughts and opinions of Carol and Linda's story. And then with throw Bud in there too. But so back in November 30th, 1989, Linda said that she was laying in bed with her husband. Now in the Netflix series, it just depicts her laying in bed, right? Now depending on which, like in the series, and I don't know if this was just for like dramatical effect or whatever, but it shows her getting out of bed. She looks like maybe she has like a personal taser gun, something. It's like, to me, it wouldn't be the way she was holding it. It wouldn't be a stun gun because you have to get up actually close and personal to do it. So it was some type of a handheld weapon, right? So then it depicts her getting knocked down, and then she's elevated, levitating outside the window, and then flying up into this saucer. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but she was going because it was red, right? She wasn't able to move, but she said it was red that she was going up, and it was like going into the heart of something or the fire of something, volcano or
She
something.
didn't talk about the aliens that time around, right? Like
No.
the grays in the room. Like she just got
This was just like
floated out.
Yeah, this was just talking about, now she did eventually talk and say, oh, they're grays, and that they had the big black eyes and very like maybe no lips or very narrow lips or whatever, and very skinny. I mean, and I think that's where a lot of like the skeptics are getting involved too with this is like, well, she just named an alien that everybody who's abducted is naming. Well, I guess you can question that, but like, well, maybe it's only grays that are abducting people, right? So,
But you're also talking, she lived on the 12th floor. So that's like, it's not like you're on the second floor of a building and you could try to figure out a way to do it. Like you're 12 stories up. Like nothing's going to pull you out that's man-made.
Right.
That's not a fire department.
Yeah, exactly. We don't, that technology does not yet exist. But then, what's really crazy, even crazier about that is you had two UN bodyguards, or I believe they might have been like New York police officers, but they were working as bodyguards for a UN dignitary. And they actually witnessed her levitating out of the window, going up into the ship, and also saw the grays with it.
Alleged UN people. And I think it's one of the key parts of this story that make it so interesting because while it adds intrigue, it brings into question the part about credibility. And that's kind of where Carol Rainey enters this story more towards the back end.
Yeah. I mean, when you watch the trailer, it sets it up to where the first thing that came to my mind was, before I even knew any of the backstory of the characters, love triangle.
Yeah.
Like you get that. I got that right away from the trailer, was that, okay, so you've got the victim, Linda, and then you've got Carol. You can tell Carol's disgruntled right off the get-go from, the start of the trailer. And you got Bud. So I'm like, okay, love triangle. Either they weren't like, Linda and Bud weren't intimate, but Carol might have felt intimidated by that relationship or whatever, or maybe he was showing her attention that she wanted. I don't know, but that's exactly what I felt before I knew any backstory. Mm-hmm. Did you feel that at all?
I guess I just wasn't paying that close of attention to that piece. Like I wanted to hear about the actual abduction. I didn't really care about any of that shit. Like I just wanted to talk about what allegedly happened and what the facts were.
See, that's where I like.
But it's dramatized. That's what they want you. That's what you experience is exactly what they wanted you to
exactly.
experience.
And that's the one thing that I really wanted to discuss tonight is like how much of that was actual fact and how much of it was just TV, right? Because like I say, I guess for me with past experiences with, talking to people, I try to find connections between different groups, right? And you've got three people here. So what is the connections? And then when you start listening to them, trying to pull out pieces of information that will give you motive, basically, right? We'll just go with that. And so I have to ask myself, did Carol Rainey come forward for good intentions, or did she come forward because she's a woman scorned?
Well, I don't know. And Carol, keep in mind, Carol was the one that wrote into Bud originally because she had read one of Bud's books.
No, not the book. A page of a chapter.
Whatever. My question, regardless of that, is how long was Linda interested in this topic? And did it predate her abduction?
Yeah, that's actually actually a really good question, because that question crossed my mind of like, okay, well, how did she hear about this guy? Was he in the news? And maybe that turned her onto a book and she thought, that sounds interesting. Maybe I should read about it. Or did she just go to the library one day and just pick it up for whatever reason and decide to just read one page?
Well, again, I think the primary focus here is intention. What was your intention? Why did you reach out to Bud Hopkins because you really wanted to understand what happened to you, or did you reach out to Bud Hopkins because you saw someone that was a popular figure in the field of ufology? Bud had written Missing Time and Intruders, among a bunch of other things, and was well known in the field for alien abductions. Did you reach out to Bud thinking, I could monetize this somehow because you had invented the UN people and you were like creating a playwright in your head? Or did this really happen and that story is just so magnificent that those things are real? And that's the question I feel like I'm constantly asking myself as I listen to that.
I mean, I had a lot of questions during this whole entire thing because, again, all right, so let's just talk about the elephant in the room. And we're gonna break this into parts. So I'm gonna go with the very, very first part of this. All right, her actual abduction, because after that, everything gets fucking crazy, and that's where I don't believe this shit. It starts coming into play. So her initial abduction, levitating out a window. 2 people saw it. Actually, 23 people around New York saw this.
Unrelated to one another.
Unrelated.
Didn't know each other.
Do you think that part is plausible, or do you believe that part's true?
Plausible.
I do too. So that's the part where, because it would take, like, even Linda in the trailer says, like, you either got to be a sociopath or basically like a really well-connected person to be able to pull off this type of a scheme, which I agree with. You're finding 23 separate people. You're organizing 23 different people. Now you're throwing in some bodyguards and stuff. Now you're getting Bud involved in it. Like, that's a fucking hell of a scheme.
Well, and again, intent. So how, and it wasn't discussed in the documentary, and I would love to know, how did those 23 people come forward? Did Bud Hopkins and his research team send out a memo to 6 blocks worth of New York City to say, did you see this happen? And he got 23 responses? Or did 23 people, unbeknownst to Linda, reach out to Bud Hopkins to say, hey, I saw somebody float out the window? I know the answer to that one is no, because some people were like, I thought it was a movie prop. They showed it in the Netflix series.
Right.
So like, it's just like any other survey on the planet. You can manipulate statistics 100 different ways from Sunday. So just because there are 23, I don't know. I can find 23 crazy people that I can get to believe anything I tell them pretty quickly and then corroborate a story for me. Mm-hmm. But what was never discussed is how those 23 people came about. If those 23 people came about organically and actually saw something, like, yeah, how can you not give credence to that and lend credibility to the story? But the question that I have is, like, it was not discussed, and I'm sure somebody could probably explain to me how it happened, but like, how did you identify these 23 folks?
Yeah, you are right. They did not bring that up, and it would be interesting to figure that out. But I'm trying to piece it together as if, the timeline as when Linda's abducted, she
November
reads
30th. Yeah.
She reads this one page from this chapter of one of Bud's books. She gets in contact with Bud. Bud's like, yeah,
Story's
fascinating. Let's have a discussion. goes through the hypnotic regression therapy. That's how you say, that's what it is, right? Yeah. And is able to go deep down into her subconscious memories and pull this stuff out. So, but is it once he gets that information, does he release that to the news media? Because I know that they were on talk shows, not just television, but they were on like podcasts, what we call podcasts today, like radio stations or whatever, talking about this. So was it when they went to and got on these radio stations and people were hearing this and like, oh shit, that's what I saw that night?
Well, that's a really good point. And again, so what's the intent and what's the motive? So if that's the way that the 23 people came about, then I would say, well, are you being legitimate? Because again, there's no photos. It's just people's stories. And yes, we have 23, but are those 23 people coming forward because Linda and Bud were on TV and I want to get famous, I want to get rich, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do those things pull together is the question. And I don't know, you might be right. Maybe your story went on there and 23 people were like, oh shit, I saw a lady floating out her window on November 30th.
Yeah, because I mean, people thought it was special effects. They thought there was a movie being, recorded or whatever. So,
Yeah.
But like, even if you were to take half those people out, you still have 12 people that potentially could be legit witnesses, to whatever happened. So I know you don't like abduction cases. You think this one's plausible, which I'm really surprised. I think it's plausible, but now moving forward, I think everything else is just a lot of bullshit. Because I take it as it's one of those things, right? So when you talk about intent, and that's actually a really good segue into what my thought was. So maybe her intentions were pure at first, but now she's starting to get that, oh, I'm a celebrity now. I'm going on to talk radio. I'm going on these different TV shows, right? So now you're getting like that monetized mode. And then like her story just kept evolving into weirder shit, right? Like it just kept going and going. And then her family got involved in it. And then it was like, I don't know, man. It was just starting to get really crazy.
So here's where I think it's important anytime you watch something like this documentary. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but I think the documentary has a tendency to lead you to where the documentary wants you to be, not follow the facts and come to your own conclusion. They tried to kind of set it up that way. Either your team Linda or your team Carol at the end, and wherever you fall is where you fall. But it certainly points the needle more towards, I guess, Carol. But there are some weird things with Linda's story, and I think episode 2 we kind of get into, like, when Linda was abducted, she then had a bump in her nose and got the bump. She went to the doctor, they x-rayed, and it was like I don't know. To me, it looked like the spring inside of a pencil, like a mechanical pencil, that kind of thing. But it didn't have the top and bottom. It was just like a corkscrew.
Yeah, but when I looked at it, I actually thought I saw like a little, like what you consider like a little resistor in there. So if you see the corkscrew, but then it like kind of bumps out, right? Then the corkscrew. So I'm like, holy shit, there's some type of like resistor or something inside there. But originally I was like, bullshit, tape something, whatever. But then Bud actually physically called. It's on video because, Cindy's recording everything because she was actually filming a side documentary.
It's kind of weird. That's weird. That's weird to me.
Yeah.
You're documenting the alien documenter.
Yeah, she was working on her own documentary from what my understanding. But anywho.
Yeah.
So he's talking to the physician or the whoever doctor who did the x-ray. He's like, no, that shit is in her nose. There was nothing. But again, if you want to talk about it like a truly elaborate scheme, now Linda has to get this physician to fucking lie about, maybe she did have something taped on her nose, but now he has to lie. He's lying about, or she's lying about this fucking x-ray was taken. Come on. I mean, that's it. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is it to be like a truly fake story. I'm not saying the entire story is true. Like I say, I think there's some bullshit in there, but the initial, like, there's just, man, it was just, what a fucking ruse.
It's interesting. The one thing that came up a bunch too was like the idea, or not the idea, it happened. She claimed nosebleeds. And then after her son was abducted, I think her son and husband all had nosebleeds at the same time too.
That's where I'm saying. That's where it got fucking weird, man.
But with the implant in her nose, so it shows up on X-rays. They talk to the doctor. Yeah, this is legit. I can, and I find it interesting that when Bud's talking to the doctor, he's like, well, would you testify to that in court? And they're like, yeah. The fuck no. If I'm a doctor, I'm going to be like, why are you asking me that question? What's really going on? Because I'm not going to give you a yes or no. Maybe I need to talk to an attorney. And this person's just like, absolutely, I'd testify in court. The reason I bring that up is because when it went to be removed, it didn't exist. The implant was gone. So did she tape a spring to the back of her nose and have her friend that was a radiologist shoot an X-ray and then come on and say, oh yeah, I'll testify? Like,
but again, man, like the depths that you would have to go to for what, a couple $1,000?
I think,
you know what I mean? Like,
I think it was and I know we're trying to talk about the whole case, but I will say this. I think she was a fame seeker. And the reason that I think she was a stay-at-home mom, raised her kid, didn't really have a lot going on. This crazy abduction story happens, all these different talk shows, whatever. And then she ends up having a band and doing a CD. And it's like, maybe that's your lifelong goal, but it's just an interesting.
She had a band, had a CD. Was that in there?
Yeah, it was in the Netflix series.
Oh, that was episode 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like towards the end of it. Okay. All right. I remember that now.
So it's just like, again, like intent. And maybe it was honest out of the gate. And it was like, I got abducted and I want to talk to people. And I'm sure it's psychologically scarring if in fact true. But to have that just snowball into this talk shows and then a CD is just, or record, I guess at that point, whatever, who knows. But
I guess the question you got to ask yourself too is how much of this that was her idea to like get on those shows, and how much of it was Bud's? Because you got to remember, Bud was very passionate about his.
Oh, I'm sure it was probably Bud. You're probably 100% right. But was that her plan the whole time?
God, dude, I mean, it's just mischievous. I don't know. I mean, you're talking like spec ops bullshit planning right here. Like literally sitting down for a year, finding your cast, lining everything and hoping that everything aligns up just perfectly. I mean, it very well could be. I don't know, man, but I just think that's just too elaborate for Linda.
I don't know.
Maybe so. I don't know, but I just think it's too elaborate.
Here's what I would like to have happen.
You want to have Linda on the show?
I would like to. No, I don't think I have any interest in talking to her, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I just.
Really?
Yeah. It's been done, maybe.
I'm
not
about
sure.
Cindy?
Point being is what I would like to do is quit my job, have 40 hours a week that I'm not dedicating to my job, and give me 1 year to create an elaborate hoax. And then we'll cover it on this podcast. And then we'll do a podcast subsequent to that where I'm like, you guys think this was real or fake?
But I guess my point with all this, all right, so if I came to you and I had this elaborate hoax that I just put together, all right, and I walked you through it. This is like Ocean's 11 bullshit at this point. But I can't pay you shit until this hits the big time, even if it does hit the big time. Would you still be interested to be part of the hoax?
So hold on. Let's talk real world about this. So you're saying this is elaborate. Let's say that the 23 witnesses only came forward because it was post TV show and they wanted fame, or maybe they did see something. That's not Linda's doing. That's the doing of the TV show and popularity. So that's out. So that wasn't a Linda plan. So at that point, the only thing Linda's done is come up with an abduction story and had her radiologist friend duct tape a spring to the back of her nose and have a X-ray.
You do realize that, and you and Ambassador actually said he witnessed the whole thing as well, right?
I thought just the two guys that she claimed. I didn't think he did.
I'm pretty sure in the documentary, he said that he actually witnessed it. So, okay, let's just say that I'm wrong.
Okay.
He didn't witness it, but let's say he did witness it and
I
came
remember he
forward.
was a member. I thought the two dudes, the two black,
The Men in Black.
yeah, were like his bodyguards or something, or she identified him walking with that guy.
Yes. So this is again where it kind of got different, right? So supposedly these two men in black came to her door, her apartment, said that they were police officers or whatnot, needed to talk to her about the abduction case, right? So they get in there and they're asking her questions. What was it, Richard and Dan or some shit? And she gave them information, kind of started going sideways a little bit. I don't really remember the details of it. She asked them to leave, and then she walks out of the room, her apartment, and either Dan or Richard has the other one up against the wall and screaming at him, yelling at him. I don't know.
Out in the hallway.
Yeah, watch the series.
The whole Men in Black thing is just like such a staple of UFO lore. Like anytime anything happens, Men in Black show up, whether it be like Virginia, Brazil. And what's interesting is her claim is similar to other claims you've heard. So is it perpetuated because of media and people hearing this, that when they make up a story, they want to fall in line so it's the same, or is this legitimately the same? Again, the purpose of intent coming back to, but you know, these shadowy government figures showing up usually to offer people money, but then to ask them not to come forward with their stories and just kind of forget about it.
Yeah. So again, like I said, this is where everything gets kind of just skewed and weird in my mind.
The Men in Black thing makes this story bizarre. I think
That's just the fucking start of the bizarreness. Like that's where it started getting weird for me. But then we haven't even started talking about Carol yet. Cindy, Carol.
No, you're right.
Why'd you look at me funny? You made me think I fucked it up.
I was just looking I had another note that I was thinking about. I didn't want to forget.
Linda and Carol. Yeah, but so Carol, we haven't even started talking about Carol yet, right? We briefly touched on her about, her documentary inside of a documentary, whatever. Yeah, so we haven't even talked about where Carol Rainey comes into play. But so the Men in Black, then they started writing letters. Remember so they wrote a letter in, or one of either Richard or Dan, whatever, wrote a letter to, was it Bud who received that letter, or did Linda receive that letter?
I think Linda received it and then gave it to Bud.
Okay. And then it like basically admitted that they were, I don't know, they couldn't, I don't know, it was just weird.
But then they'd had phone calls too, and
recorded phone calls.
I don't know. I like Carol because she, she's the skeptic. She's kind of the antagonist in all of this because she's just filming her documentary. But the whole time, to your original point, when we first started, you were like, well, it's a love triangle out of the gate. Like, it's exactly how Netflix wanted to portray it. And what they're scheming at is, did Carol, and I think it's an interesting point. This was what I was looking at, checking the name.
I thought I fucked up the names.
But
again.
But what was Carol's motivation? Was she motivated to try to figure out if Linda was telling the truth? Or was she worried about adultery between her husband and Linda? And that's where this gets, it muddies the water, because what is her intent?
Exactly. And it starts to get super complicated at this point. And you're right. When I watched originally Love Triangle, so then you start watching, but actually Carol and Linda were friends. They became really good friends, and they both admitted that. But where it went sideways is Bud's full focus at that point was Linda, right? Because Linda kept coming back with all this strange shit, right? And so I think that's where Carol started getting skeptical, right? Like, is she playing my husband?
Because Bud was a big deal and had a lot to lose. Bud was fully vested in her. So if she ended up being bullshit, then all of the things Bud did previously comes into question, right? Like, so again, that 90-10 rule, if Bud interviewed 100 people and said 10 are credible, But now this one that he says it's 100% real turns out to be bullshit. Well, then the 10 that Bud said are credible are now bullshit too.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he did have a lot to lose, right? And then you go into when Linda sat down for her first hypnotic regression session. And, she's going through the whole, process of it where Bud would use to frequently, help abductees recall their memories. And Carol actually brings up a really good point because all those sessions were recorded. Mm-hmm. So if you watch Linda's very first hypnotic regression session and then you watch the other ones after that, I don't think she was under fucking hypnosis. Mm-hmm. The first one, yes. The other ones, no. So Carol does bring up some good points there. So that's where I said I think everything got really stupid after that.
Mm. Well, and it becomes the question of like with hypnotic regression like that, how much of that are people really recalling the story and how much of that gets mixed in with like your dreams and interpretations of what you think you may have saw, in addition to what the person performing the hypnotic regression maybe is embedding in you, purposefully or not, regardless. Like there are a lot of outside factors affecting what's going on at that point, outside of the very first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a controversial technique, right? But if you think of like the UFO community, it's just one of those tools that they have to be able to really get into somebody's, subconscious thoughts. So I think it all comes down. It's almost like when we talked about, Gregory's gifts, right? Mm. You can use them for good or nefarious ways. And you're like, oh, I'm fucking nefarious, right? Like, mm-hmm. I think this is the same thing. If you have that ability to be able to do that, are you doing it for the sole intention of good, or are you doing it because you want popularity and all that?
Well,
notoriety.
And I think this is what's hard with Bud. And while I really appreciate it, I don't know that Bud had an income stream outside of writing books and doing all this case research. So while it's nice to say that I'm vanilla on everything and I'm just here for the real works and the truth, you still have utilities and rent and everything else. So like paying for those things, I think gets complicated. Just monetary issues in general make this complicated.
And I think, with Bud, I mean, his passion for decades was
total pioneer, man.
The research of alien abduction cases. Mm-hmm. And I think that he truly just wanted to believe this case. And I think, like you say, I think the beginning of it's very plausible. I think that, it's plausible that she was abducted. But everything after that, I think his view was skewed just because he was wanting it to be, he just wanted all this stuff to be true so bad that he was just a believer right off the bat without actually, maybe looking through a different lens when it came to Linda.
You know what's interesting about this series? When I finished episode 3, I was thinking about it because he probably had like a 30-second spot, but with Linda's husband. So Linda's husband was around for all of this.
Yeah.
And he had like a 30-second spot that didn't really say anything. And I would have loved to have heard, do you believe your wife? Did you ever question your wife? Did you see some of the things that your wife claims to have seen? Now, her son said he did, and he was abducted and saw the gray aliens. And
the cool thing is they even interviewed him, obviously, later in life when he was an adult. Now, granted, he didn't want to show his face.
No, and he said it fucked him up. And I get, you know what? That is what I would expect a real abduction to be like. I'm living my life. I don't want this to define who I am. While it's interesting, it fucked me up mentally. He probably doesn't want to go out past dark now,
Well, yeah, but you can also look at childhood trauma in a different way. Was it truly he was abducted, or was it the childhood trauma because his mother made this elaborate scheme up and made him lie to a lot of different people, and it made the news, right? And so when people see him, they just see him as this dude got fucking probed by an alien.
Well, I mean, he claims that he got abducted, right?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying is like this elaborate scheme or hoax to get your child involved in that. That's all kinds of fucked up at that point.
Yeah, people do crazy things.
Like if he really was abducted, like my heart goes out to him with all the trauma that came with that. But if he wasn't actually abducted and all of his traumas from his mom, fuck that bitch.
Like, and what if that's all that they ever talked about in the house? And so as a, a young, super imaginative kid, you have a very vivid dream and you believe it to be real and you wake up and, oh my God, did this really happen or did it not? And to your point, if it did happen, like, God love the kid. Like, that is a horrific experience. And they do say that it's genetic and kind of lineage based, because I think they even talked in the Netflix series that happened to her, some of her family, or they had been haunted, or
yeah, let's get into that in a second, because you just made me think of something with when it came to the son. Because if you think of that scenario, once they started talking about it, Linda was in a different room, and then stuff was happening to where she just knew that the
Greys grabbed him and she was frozen, according to him.
Yeah, and that's when he was like, yeah, and I was just telling my mom, come help me, but she wasn't. And she was just basically allowing these Greys or whatever to take him away. But they had the nosebleeds, right? Because remember, if Linda's first thing was she had a nosebleed, and then they had the right side nosebleed. But they never discussed, and correct me if I'm wrong, did her son get an x-ray as well? Did his x-ray show an implant?
They didn't talk about any of that.
See, that's just weird to me.
I don't know, but implants to me are weird too. And to be fair, Linda's not the only person that has been abducted that's claimed to have had an implant. Right. They've identified a bunch of implants, and I know like Gary Nolan's talked about it. They've removed some of where the implant actually existed to be removed, which again, in Linda's case, when they went to remove it, it wasn't there. So something happened, or it was falsified from the beginning. But implants that have been removed have shown to be really odd materials. So like, is there something there? Is there not? I don't love the alien abduction thing at all. I do. Chris Bledsoe makes me think harder about it. But in general, I don't know that I buy it. And Linda's, again, the tough part there is like, it's there, it's in an x-ray, and then when you go to remove it, it's gone. So like, either aliens took it out or you taped something to the other side of your nose because the tape wouldn't show up.
Now, she's claiming that she was abducted more than once, right?
Boy, that is a great question. You should probably know that. I don't really remember. Just the primary abduction case, her son got abducted.
For some reason, I'm thinking she had multiple abductions, and that's why she kept going back to Bud. And this is where I was getting to the point, and I really want to talk about the lineage here in a second, because that is a very interesting point. But if you watch those videos that Carol is contesting, her very first video that she did during the hypnotic regression, her demeanor was completely different everyone after that. So you have to ask yourself, which we just did, was she really under hypnosis? Who really knows? But I would really be curious, because if you watch all the different ones that Bud did with all the other actors, and I'm saying actor as in the players who have been abducted, they're almost like incoherent when they're talking, right? They're just kind of like mumbling. They're just kind of whatever. But she was very articulate, like very detailed. So if you're looking at it from Carol's side of it, again, man, that's where I think it gets to be a bunch of bullshit. But now the lineage thing, there have been reports that like it's kind of like a family thing. If one person in your family is abducted, you usually have maybe one or two more that have been abducted in that same family. So that begs the question that we've asked before: are we an experiment? Are we a farm? Are we
farm, lab, or zoo?
Yeah, farm, lab, or zoo, right? Mm-hmm. So that to me is an experiment, right? If you're getting one bloodline and that's who you're abducting, I mean, what are you looking for?
What are you looking for, or what are you manipulating?
Yeah. Are you trying to like maybe create some type of, I don't know. It's weird.
My friends and I had this theory a while ago about autism, and genetic abnormalities we treat as abnormalities in society. But I can't help but wonder if, and there's a couple steps to take back here before I even explain this theory. If we operate off of the idea that this alien race is probably a race such that, there's always in the class quintessential gray alien, they're an emotionless face and they just communicate via, telepathy.
Yeah.
But as human beings right now, we have such an inordinate amount of desire to be famous on social media, or we talk about what is your impetus for doing what you're doing here. In like Linda's case, are you trying to monetize your abduction, or like what is your intent? One of the things I think is interesting, and I've heard stories about it, but if aliens were to do genetic experimentation on humans and try to modify our DNA, almost like a terraforming, but not with the planetary piece, but with the actual human beings here, if they were modifying our DNA, is something like autism, which we look at as like not a negative, but it's abnormal. What if autism is actually what they're after, and that autism, gene coming forward isn't something that's not supposed to happen? It's supposed to happen, because when you look at autistic people, typically you have people that are like savants, like they can memorize a book front to back, or they can play any song you play them by ear, or they know exactly what they like and what they don't like, and they only focus on what they like, and they don't let social distractions, pull them off the path. What if that's what we're being farmed or part of a lab to do? That it's basically like fall in line. You find the thing that's of interest to you, and you do only that, and you're not worried about the noise out there. That is all you're focused on. And if we have a group of people that are focused on those individual things that we need to progress, whatever that may be, then boy, that's a great way to get there.
Yeah. And actually, I was just sitting here thinking, when you're thinking about like Linda and her son, when we're talking about the lineage, I would be curious to know if any of her previous family, like other family members, were abducted before her.
Well, they had paranormal experiences for sure, I think.
Yeah.
She talked about something in the Netflix series. I don't remember what it was now.
But you would think, though, if they were wanting to manipulate genetics in any way, to your point, you would want to find someone who was much younger and be able to reproduce. Because I guess my question would be, when she was abducted the first time, did she already have her son, or did the son happen after the abduction?
Oh, well, that much I don't know.
So, I guess that's going to be the question, right? So, because to your point, it would support a little bit. So you've got a younger female. We want to modify genetics. She's able to provide a child, like childbirth. We do whatever, alternating DNA, whatever. She has a child. Now that child is a production, of whatever they created. That's such an elaborate scheme.
Yeah.
Are you following what I'm saying?
No, I am.
You're going down the lineage.
I am. Or maybe, to that farm lab zoo question, did they abduct Linda to run a DNA test and understand her habits to then know? And it would be interesting to know like some of Linda's biometrics, like what blood type is Linda? What history, family history ailments has she had? When we had Paul on the one time, remember you said like, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, you might be able to see something. Like
you might have been abducted.
There's some interesting shit out there. Like Gary Nolan's talked about different areas of the brain doing different things from abductees, or people who have claimed to been abducted versus not. So like something physically is happening in human bodies from abduction. But the question is it manifested because they're making it manifest, or is it manifesting because something actually happened? And I don't think we know enough about brains or human biology to know the answer.
Yeah, and I think with Bud, I think he just projected himself onto Linda. And what I mean by that is he wanted to believe this so much that he basically, Linda could have said the sky was purple, and he'd be like, I absolutely agree with you. The sky is purple, right? Because he just really wanted to believe this. This is, I think, was like if you think about it, and we've talked about this, why do people come forward? Especially when you're an educated person or whatnot. He's been investigating and doing research into alien abductions, like we said, for decades. This is his big break. So do you feel that him feeling that maybe this was his big break and it would provide credence to everything that he's worked on over the years, that he basically went or just basically put his gut aside of what he was feeling like, this is, my gut's telling me this is bullshit, and just put it aside and just went balls to the wall with it, pedal to the floor, sixth gear?
Do I believe that? Is that the question?
My question is, do you feel that he was just basically like blinded by what reality?
I think he'd been doing this a long time and had continued to do it. He's in his 70s. Like he was getting up there at this point. And like whether she was real or not, you can't help but wonder, like everyone wants to retire at some point. I think what Bud did was interesting because I will say, if you love what you do, you'd never work a day in your life. Well, fuck right off. Most people don't love what they do. We got to support our families, and
Right.
whatever that takes to get there is what we're going to do. But like Bud at 70 years old, if you're on Ricky Lake and Geraldo and all this other shit, I'm sure they're able to monetize that somehow, be it books or however. So like for him, whether it's true or false,
He got a Red Lobster gift card.
yeah, did he care? I don't know. He probably did, because it would kill his career if it came out that she was, full of shit. At this point, there's probably no way to prove it one way or the other. But the other thing too, proving it one way or the other, going back to the actual story, Carol, how about Carol going to a handwriting expert from the notes that were coming in from the Men in Black?
Yeah. Again, that's where I'm saying it got crazy, because she is doing what a lot of people of us whoever watched this was thinking that you should do. You're being trust but verify, right? So she trusted Bud, she trusted Linda because her and Linda were friends. But once shit started getting weird between Bud and Linda, that's when Carol's skeptic eyes or whatever came into play. It's because now she's viewing this through a different lens. Now she's viewing it through, Linda's trying to, hook up with my husband. My husband is showing this woman way too much attention. So there's got to be something more than just an alien abduction. And that's where I say like a woman scorn at this point. So what is Carol's true intention? Because now Carol's releasing shit that's bashing Bud, the love of her life, discrediting him because she's pissed off at Linda. I know that love can make people do weird shit, but she does bring up a lot of great points. The handwriting sample, saying that shit off. All right, good on you. And it proved that it's the exact same handwriting. Doesn't prove who did it, right? Or did he say, or was that Linda's handwriting that she sent it to? All right, so the letter on the thing was Linda's. Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. I don't know, man. But it was just, again, I think that the Carol's...
What if Linda got abducted and it was the abduction story she said and the thing in the nose got implanted, but Linda then got greedy and wanted to capitalize on it after the story happened, and then all these other things escalated? What if the actual abduction, like, just compartmentalize it for a minute. What if the first abduction, the original abduction, you floated out the window into this craft and that happened? What if that's the only part of this is true? It would be an awful shame that she would have taken it to the lengths she did to capitalize on it in whatever manner she did, just to make the story already great when the original story was great by itself.
I 100% believe that's what happened. And that's why I was telling you, like, I believe the abduction part of it. I believe that is plausible. I believe that there has been enough witnesses when she was under hypnotic regression, the way that her first interview went, I believe that she believes, like what Paul would put, that she was abducted. All right. Everything after that's where I said it got stupid, and I don't believe it. I think that she, to your point, she was greedy. I think she wanted more. I think once she got the taste of that limelight, when she's on these radio stations, Now Today podcasts, she's, on Ricky Lake, she's on Geraldo, she's on these different, where people, she's now out in the public. So when she walks down the street, people are like, hey, you're that lady who got abducted. And, you're feeling that, like, fame. And that's where I'm saying, like, shit just got stupid at that point. So the first part of it, cool. But the next part, I agree with Carol. I think that she finally realized what Linda was doing. Bud was blinded by the thought of all this actually being true. And this was the case that he has been waiting on his entire life. And and Linda took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And he was blinded by that.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I sit on this one.
So you think, all said and done, she got abducted, but then the rest is bullshit?
I think it's plausible that she absolutely was abducted.
Did it happen or did it not? Not that it's plausible.
Why can't I just say it was plausible?
I'm curious to get your take. You're discrediting the rest. So you say it's plausible, but do you think it happened or do you think it didn't?
So based off the hypnotic regression, based off the 23 witnesses. Now, obviously, my opinion will change if I find out this 23 witnesses were paid actors by said Linda. But
which I don't think would be. I bet that there are people seeking fame if it did in fact happen post her being on a Ricky Lake or Geraldo or something else.
But see, that's the other thing you got to take, and that's a valid point, man. Like, say they're, on the radio and they're talking about this abduction, and then you got the one man or woman's like, well, I want my 30 seconds of fame. I fucking saw it. Yeah, this bitch was fucking hanging by her feet, going up, whatever.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing, and it would be, but they're not going to say that, because if they've heard this, if they've watched it on TV, if they heard it on the radio, they're getting facts, right? Whether they're true or false, they're getting facts, and they're going to base what they say to whoever when they say, yeah, I witnessed it, based off those original radio or TV where they're getting it. But you did bring up, I would love to know if these people came forward, like are there police reports from that day of people seeing
Is
somebody?
that how the 23 came forward? They all filed police reports.
Yeah. Now that to me, I'd be like, fuck yeah. They saw something. It's got to be legit.
Yeah. And again, I'm sure that information's out there. It's not going to be in the Netflix docuseries, but I think those are important little tidbits of information that.
But what pisses me off about this, even though as well done as this docuseries was, and I don't say that because I don't watch a lot of shit, but when I watch documentaries, it's a little different. But I think it was done exceptionally well. But the part that pisses me off, it answered absolutely fucking nothing.
Yeah. As most of these things do.
All it did was cause us to bring it on here, like, is Carol telling the truth or is Linda telling the truth? And Bud is the victim.
It's like fucking Tiger King all over again. Did that bitch Carol do it or not?
Fucking Carol Baskets. Oh my God, I forgot about Tiger King. Did you know he got married? He's getting married.
Good for him.
Yeah, him and his cellmate are getting married.
That sounds right.
And you'll be shocked by this, but the dude's like 40 years younger than that guy.
How about that?
30 or 20, whatever. He's
good on him.
Barely in his 20s, I think. Anywho, we regressed. But yeah, so very interesting. I do highly encourage all of our listeners and viewers to go and watch this 3-part series.
It was very entertaining.
It's 3 45-minute
and again,
clips.
Ufology is being popularized now. So we've got this series. We've got, and maybe at some point we review it too, George Knapp, who we've talked about and who's been a player in this space forever, had a Netflix docuseries come out last week called Alien Investigation. Super fascinating. Cattle mutilations, the Caleres, Brazil alleged alien attack. Like just investigating and talking to all of these people. Again, it's being popularized now. And then the congressional hearing on Wednesday, right? Like it's not mainstream media because you're still not seeing it covered on, not routinely anyway, on those pieces. But I can't help but wonder if as things like these congressional hearings and these Netflix series keep coming out, people are going to be more and more exposed to it. Whether they believe it or not is irrelevant. They're exposed to it. So the mass of people listening is slowly growing. So for all you folks out there that's been watching and listening to us and to others for a long time, just know that the base of people continues to grow as this becomes more prevalent on social media and other platforms.
Okay. Where are you at on this?
On the Manhattan abduction?
Yeah, the thing we've been talking about for the last hour and
Yeah.
X.
Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna do to you or do to myself what I did to you. I would put this as plausible.
Nope, can't say plausible. You either believe it or you don't. That's what you just did to me.
Right. So I do not believe the Men in Black. I think the back piece of this is total bullshit. And I'll be honest with you, I thought this whole thing was total bullshit. But the reason I'll back off that statement is in talking to Paul, who's much more of an expert than I am. I just think it's interesting. Talking to Paul, Christopher Bledsoe's abduction experiences have been very similar to what Linda described. Now, and again, this is me questioning everything and trying to be real with it. Did Christopher Bledsoe base some of what he saw off of Linda's abduction?
It's a huge conspiracy, Brian.
Listen, I'm just saying, in a world where...
Finish your statement, because I like where you're going with this.
In a world where 90% of what we hear is bullshit, you have to fucking question everything. Like, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. Like, if I can definitively prove that something happened, then that's it. It's a case closed. And like, this is game over. How
ruined would his credibility be if it was... You just mentioned.
Oh, Christopher Bledsoe. I don't think
the government's using them.
Fucking A. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're meeting with SpaceX routinely, like, what the fuck? There is no reason anyone should be meeting with Christopher Bledsoe. And no offense to Christopher Bledsoe. I hope you watch this at some point. But hearing you talk, I'm like, you're not somebody that I want to do my taxes. How's that? So, like if you have a government agency talking to this guy, like, there's got to be real good reason. There's something behind that somewhere, because it's not that you have this, global catastrophic changing idea, you're going to pull the world down by its tail and put it in your pocket. It's not happening. Like, something that you said aligns with some kind of research or historical data that they have, that they've corroborated to say, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because somewhere somebody has all of these points of data and they're looking at it in a chart format. And if enough things cross, you circle where they cross and you're like, I'm going to investigate everything that has to do with whatever this is. And for whatever that intersection is, that's where Christopher Bledsoe exists. And they've just said, like, this is the guy. If this phenomena is real and what we've kind of pieced together is real, something is, for some reason, you are the key to this puzzle.
One thing we never talked about, and because we really don't know, did the government ever knock down Linda's door, other than these fake Men in Black? Because we know if you're truly onto something, the government goes hard in the paint.
Bob Lazar.
Absolutely. So, and now if you think of Chris Bledsoe, they didn't go hard in the paint on him, but they are utilizing.
But Linda didn't take element 115. And I think if what Bob's saying is true, I think that's why they're blowing down the door.
But if you would really think, if the government actually knows that people are being abducted, which supposedly there is an agreement between certain alien races and our U.S. government where a certain amount of people can be abducted. If you want to go down the fucking rabbit hole, whatever. I'm just saying, if the government absolutely knows that people are being abducted, but the government's doing their typical thing and they're trying to hide shit, why hasn't Linda been found in some ditch somewhere?
Well, what is she going to blow up?
that abductions are absolutely happening.
But she has no
And
proof.
it's now happening inside. She had 23 witnesses. And
Maybe
she had some type of thing in her nose.
that wasn't there that went to be removed, in the 23 witnesses. We don't know how they came into play.
I believe she was abducted several times. They could have removed it because they didn't want the government to have that technology yet.
I don't think Linda was worth the government's time. Whereas I think Bob Lazar, if in fact he has 115 or had 115.
Do you think the government looked at Linda and was just like, what she's saying is 100% true, but people are going to view this as a straight money grab, so no one's going to actually believe what she has to fucking say, so we're just going to leave it?
I don't know. That's probably what they thought with Bob, too, because they could discredit him.
Yeah, but Bob was different. Bob stole from the government.
Bob was smart as shit, and Linda is a, New York housewife that has this extreme story.
I did like her accent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think if you sat here and thought hard enough and long enough, you could poke holes through. You could go either way. You could be on the Linda side or you can be on the Carol side. I think you can do either one of them.
But that's like what you just said is just so confounding for this field, because there are so many bullshitters out there that you have to go to the length to poke holes in every single story, because you feel like the reason that this is a hard topic to bring about in conversation. So Thanksgiving's coming up.
Mm-hmm. I'd much rather talk about this than politics.
This is a hard conversation to bring up because of all the stories that are bullshit. So if you want to have an intellectual conversation about UFOs or aliens or anything else, like, you have to, in my mind at least, you have to come into it where you approach it as, here's what the universe looks like. 90% of this universe is bullshit, and here's why. And you blow the holes in the 90% of it. But then the 10%, it's not that either I can't blow holes in it or there's not enough information to blow holes into it. Therefore, it's worth more research and investigation to find out what's real and what isn't. Because I'm a believer the universe is too big. It's just statistically unlikely that we are the only living organisms out there, wherever they're, and however far there may go.
But what if in that research, once it gets to that point where, further research is needed, but that's when Big Brother swoops in and steals it all, so we still are left with these questions?
Well, I think that's what's happening. I think that's why these congressional hearings are so fucking important. If we have the Ryan Graves and David Fravor who are out there flying our $30 million jets, or David Grushes who have the top secret clearance saying there's more to this story and it's all sitting with defense contractors because we can't get Freedom of Information Act requests in. And now we're doing round 2 of the congressional hearings. Here's your Navy Admiral, the dude that ran Arrow, coming forward to say, we were the heads. We ran these programs, and we can tell you for a fact, you trusted us with your government dollars, your Department of Defense dollars to keep you safe while you sleep, that there are things going on out there that we can't explain, that are beyond our capabilities, that are either black ops projects that we're not aware of, and we should at least have visibility to from a spend standpoint, not necessarily the tech, but a spend. Or if it's not that, then it's something from either here and we don't know where they are, or they're from out there and we definitely don't know where they are.
One thing I wish I would have done before this episode, it was looked on, because I think Paul brought it up, the MUFON website, where they list all their potential credible, investigations. Was MUFON around? Yeah, they were around at this point, right? In 89 when this took place?
God, that's a good question. I don't know when MUFON started.
Man, Paul, write us a note. Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to know if they were around at that time, if they were established, did they actually come in and do some type of investigation on that? Or have they done an investigation post?
Well, Bud probably, I have no idea. And I think Bud's since dead, but
yeah, he is.
Bud, if Bud would have, MUFON has members, but Bud could have been the one doing the investigation.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it would be something that we should look into just to see if MUFON had anything to do with it. But Yeah. I don't know. I think Netflix, it was a great series. I just think it left more questions than answers. And I think it poised you. It was like the fucking political ball game, right? They want you to pick a side and you need to pick that side. And you're either Club Linda or you're Club fucking Carol.
Not Carol Baskins.
Not Carol Baskins. Would you be Carol Baskins or would you be fucking Tiger King? Team Tiger King?
I'd go Team Tiger King.
I would too.
Yeah, just because he's so fucking out there. He's just so fucking weird. Crazy.
So weird.
I didn't really know what was going on, but he was entertaining.
That was one of the best, worst fucking
I'm here
things
for a good
ever.
time, not a long time.
Exactly.
Tiger King.
I'm glad it was only like, how many seasons? One season?
I couldn't tell you.
God, I'm glad
it was enough.
Yeah, it was enough. It was just too much. And then you had Ghost Adventures to go out there and investigate the, I don't know, whatever the fuck you call his zoo that he had.
Oh.
You ever watch that?
No.
That was actually pretty interesting. You should probably check that out, being you're on a podcast and all. It was pretty good. All right. So you are on this 50-50.
I don't even think 50-50 is fair. I want to believe it, but listen, like I said, I got to blow holes in everything. You tell me where those 23 people came from, and I'll put that in my stack. Right now, I'm saying, Linda, I'm sorry, but it's like a 20% I believe you and 80% I feel like it's bullshit. And it's unfortunate if what I said is true, where the original abduction happened and then she, just made it so extreme that the whole thing washes out.
Yeah, that's the sad part about it. And I love how like the tides have turned a little bit, right? Because I'm usually the one that's like, fuck this is dumb as shit. And you're like, no, man, you just gotta look at everything, right? But anywho, but I agree with you. Like but this is where we differ, is I do believe the first part of it is the first 30 seconds of this whole thing is true.
Where she woke up.
Yeah, she woke up. I think that, again, and I like how Paul phrased that. She believes that she was abducted. Right. And I think that's truly all that matters in the grand scheme of things. If that's what she truly feels, then you be you, cool. But it's just everything after that part. Like the 23, again, if those 23 witnesses were found to be just paid fucking actors and they're part of this elaborate scheme or hoax with Linda, then obviously that would change everybody's opinion. It would also add 2 black eyes to Bud.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe in any alien abductions? Do you think it's happening?
I think that they think that they were abducted. I'm going to go and pull in a fucking Paul.
So no.
So I don't know, man. So the more we start talking, like the more we've talked about this, right? We've been through 20 some episodes. I've been through 20 some episodes with you at this point. And as you know, I didn't look into any of this shit before you and I decided we're going to do this. But I do believe, I guess what I can say is I do believe that people may have had experiences with things that we don't know about. Are they extraterrestrial? Are they spiritual? Are they whatever? I don't know. But I do believe that people are having experiences.
You believe Betty and Barney Hill, didn't you? Wasn't that your takeaway?
I said it was plausible. And the reason I said that, dude, because they had nothing to fucking gain. Like, you're living in the fucking Jim Crow fucking eras, right? Like, you are a mixed couple. Why would you, like, to your point, intent, why would you want you and your white wife or you and your black husband to go out in Jim Crow era and say, we were fucking abducted? It makes no fucking sense. So that's why I do believe that something happened to them. Were they abducted? I don't know. But I do believe that they both experienced something, but they went through the hypnosis regression, right? And if you listen to the audio tape that they had, they were similar to some of the ones that Bud had, but what was not similar was fucking Linda's other videos that she had. you know? So that's where I think she was fucking lying. I don't think she was necessarily lying about the original abduction. Everything after that, I just think is complete fucking bullshit. But that's when it was like, you look at a tent, like what you were talking about. Like, I don't think Betty and Barney, like, they had nothing to gain there, man. What, you wanted more attention, more negative attention on you?
I think I think there is enough evidence to say that someone is visiting, either lives in our planet and is checking out what we're doing, or is visiting from some of otherworldly encounter.
Yeah.
Right. So and I do believe that. So it's not a far cry to then say, again, the farm lab zoo hypothesis. If you're here, what is it you're here doing?
Right.
You're not just passing through, presumably. So what are you doing? So it makes the idea of abduction much more plausible to me.
Yeah, and I do find it interesting, though. If you think of all the abduction cases that we've looked at, they are abducted and they can remember up to that certain point. They can remember very small, minuscule, different things, and then like their mind is just erased, right? That's the same characteristic that you go through. So then you got to ask yourself, well, are they just saying that because they heard it back here when it started? You know, so I mean, you could actually use that same thought process through all the different things that we've covered over the years, or over the last few months, right? But I don't know. This one to me is, I leave it up to our viewers and to leave comments. What are your thoughts? You know, what's your opinions? I think this one, again, I think this is like kind of a divisive way of doing it. You're going to have the two sides. There's not.
But Netflix set it up that way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Again, it's not a fair, like, forget
Yeah.
about the sides. Like, do you think Linda was telling the truth or not? That's, and not for you to answer. That's more like, I think as someone, if you haven't seen it, that's how I would go in. Like, Netflix is going to try to set you up. It's Carol versus Linda, and who?
Oh, yeah,
right? I mean,
forgot-
that right out of the gates. That's
And
how they set
I
it
forgot
up.
to mention, Linda's suing Netflix.
Oh yeah, you did. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I heard that today, that Linda's actually suing Netflix over this docuseries. I don't know. Apparently it painted her in a bad light or something. I don't fucking know. Something like that. There's more to come, obviously, with that, and we'll probably throw it into a different episode at some point. But yeah, I think it's funny that you agree to be on something, right? It's not like they forced her to be there. And then you're going to sue them afterwards. And it could be just because of the way that it was this tit for tat type scenario. But she obviously knew what Carol was saying about her, because she was like, you heard the one person, you want to listen to what she has to say? And she's like, yeah, right. So you knew what, at that point, you should have known what type of docuseries this is going to be. It's going to be, to your point, who is right? Who do you want to believe?
It would be interesting to have Netflix do and maybe it's the George Knapp. I haven't finished it yet. I'm about halfway through the investigation Alien. I'm sure if he was involved, it's more well done, but in the couple episodes I've watched, it's very good. But it would be interesting to have episodes that don't pit it as a dramatic series and more of just, here are the facts, come to your own conclusions.
And obviously that physician who probably read the x-ray or whatever no longer exists, right? They probably have done pass at this point. So that's like, so you could really only go so far, you know, for this docu-series. It's not like you can go back and re-interview those 23 witnesses.
But you could have Linda go and meet with Gary Nolan and have him do a CAT scan to see if the area of the brain that Gary's identified as being overactive in abductees is overactive in Linda's brain. That's not definitive, but Gary's identified that these individuals that have been abducted have medulla or something. I don't know. I don't know the part of the brain, but whatever part of the brain is like hyperactive in these folks that have been abducted or enlarged or something. I forget what it is.
And, you know, actually to that point, you know, going out and finding someone who's highly credible in the hypnoregression, you know, today, to have Linda in there on their couch, and do a new, because if the story's true, the shit's not going to change, right? If you're actually under hypnosis, have someone neutral that's not familiar with the case. Well, I mean, it's a pretty big case, so probably that's not going to be the.
I don't know. If you're not somebody that's been interested in this topic and haven't seen the Netflix docuseries, you probably wouldn't see it. So if you were a neutral third party.
But that would be interesting to see what, and video it and compare to where, back in the 80s, 90s when she was having, it's like, the regression therapy going on, compared it to today, because you're if it's true, if everything was true and it's down, like those truths are in your like subconscious, then nothing should change over 20, 40 years.
But does she
30 years.
care? And here's one last point on this. Let's talk about intent again. Mm-hmm. Do you think Linda got paid for doing this? Because I'm going to say the answer is probably yeah. And you don't think Linda got paid for doing this?
I don't think Linda made shit.
I fucking guarantee you Netflix.
But I bet you Carol's trying to get some fucking
And if
cash.
she didn't, then that's why she's suing their ass right now.
Oh, you mean getting money from Netflix?
Yeah, for the docuseries.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they got paid for something. But I thought you were asking, over the years, do you think Linda is still capitalizing from her shit from the 80s? I'm gonna say fuck no.
I think it's an interesting polar opposite, because you've got Bob, who's hesitant to do anything. He just doesn't fucking care. He came out with this story because he wanted to protect himself, assuming he would just disappear.
Because Linda was still wearing those like fucking pleated pants from like the 1970s, 80s. That
damn
like,
right.
So,
dude, it's cyclical. They'll eventually come back.
I don't know. So I don't think she's made shit from this experience. Maybe like from Netflix. Yeah, obviously I would assume that she got monetized somehow. Same with Carol. But I don't know. It is actually a really good docuseries. Other than it just ends abruptly. It does pit you against, you're either for or against. That's the way it was designed. But I think with just like the stage lighting and all that stuff and the music and that everything, I think it was just put together really well.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, make sure to go out there, check it out. The other thing going on right now, we talked about Investigation Alien, the series by George Knapp. If you follow George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, make sure to check that out, because George Knapp's a pioneer in this field, just no different than Bud Hopkins, but he's more of a reporter type. And then, like we said, this coming Wednesday, what we say today is the 11th. This Wednesday, the 13th, is the next U.S. congressional hearing on UAPs. So again, it's coming to the front in social media, and now it's coming to the front in terms of Congress. Is it real? Is it not real? We want to know. But from the congressional front, it's where the fuck is our money going?
Yeah, no, and we'll never know. This isn't gonna, dude. I'm telling you right now, this fucking.
I'm maintaining hope.
I know you're jacked about it.
Hope.
Ain't shit coming out of it. All of this stuff that is truly legit that we want to know about is gonna be taken offline down in a fucking skiff somewhere. They're gonna go down there. That's when they're gonna divulge all the information that we want to know, and they're just pandering to us right now because it's the hot topic. They want to make sure that the government makes sure that all of us people who are dumb as fuck don't know what's going on.
Well, I think that's where it's hard when you get elected officials who are around for 4 years and then out. No one's ever going to tell you shit.
No. So, no, we're not. Nothing is crazy.
You're just a real fucking negative Nancy.
I'm a negative Nancy right now, yeah. You got me all pissed off because I believed Linda. Now
after you've got your... What is this again?
Oh, my El Squacho. Can people see it? Dude, this is the fucking best shirt ever.
Bigfoot and quite the ensemble there. Probably sporting a 6-shooter. You just can't see it.
Fucking great, man.
That's beautiful.
This is what I like. This is the one thing I love about this podcast is I come in here wearing all these funny ass shirts.
Getting yourself outfitted.
Yeah. All alien fucking Sasquatched up, and you're in here just wearing Bowling Green, some fucking band shirt.
Keeping it real, dude. Just keeping it real.
It's good stuff. Hey, before we end it here, guess what?
Yeah.
We're now over 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Oh, excellent.
Another milestone.
Glad. Well, thank you all for...
It's such a milestone that YouTube sent us an email to let us know that we hit a milestone.
Oh, good. I haven't checked the email, but that's good. Well, thank you for everyone for watching and listening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you can obviously subscribe, listen, subscribe. Where in the fuck am I going with this, dude?
I don't know. You can follow us on
It's been a long
Facebook.
night.
You can follow us on Instagram. You can reach out to us on our email. Please like, subscribe, give us your feedback. We're
That's what I was
interested in
looking for.
positive and negative. We don't care what it is. We just want to hear from you guys. We'd like to talk about whatever's. You and I have been talking a lot. Like, we want to talk about what's in the news and more relevant, because there just seems to be more. And I don't know if the algorithm has just pegged who I am as a person and is now feeding it to me, or if it's really more prevalent. But to me, it seems to be more prevalent between congressional hearings and Netflix series, just amongst another couple things. But like, if there are things out there that you guys are watching, listening, hearing about that you think would be cool for us to cover, please let us know. We're happy to check it out. We always love new topics. I mean, we got in this field because we think it's interesting, and if nothing else, it leads for interesting conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm still really hoping that our listeners and viewers will send in their own personal experiences. We don't have to use real names, but I want to read this shit. I want other people to comment on it.
We haven't got too many yet.
No, not yet. Not enough to fill
Right.
an hour's podcast. So
Yeah.
please send that stuff to us. Otherworldly Encounters 2024@gmail.com.
Yep.
That's where we'll get it. So with that, Brian.
Yeah. Keep your mind open, your eyes on the sky. You never know what's going to fly by.
And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks.